Welcome to Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis. I'm Tim O'Malley with Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated, John Brice of FootballScoop, and this is the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame Instant Analysis. Marcus Freeman, Sunday press conference. We were joking in there, if this was for the Sun Bowl, there wouldn't be as many people showing up for that Sunday press conference, but it's for the playoffs. They have moved their week up, logically, of course. The game was on Friday. Notre Dame, Freeman mentioned, will practice in the morning to accommodate finals, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They'll go back to the regular schedule on Thursday, which becomes a Friday. As convoluted as that gets, they know what they're doing. They've had this plan for a very long time. And crucial to it, Howard Cross is will be back. Jeremiah Love will be back already. He never left other than for that first half. And Devin Ford, after a long absence, will be back from special teams. Kingston Viliamo-Asa, the player of note that will be out. And Marcus Freeman did say Mitch Jeter is healthier than he's been and had a couple good weeks of practice.
Well, that's great news about Mitch Jeter, but we've heard that he's been healthy for a while too. Yeah. But Marcus Freeman talked about doing a lot of live stuff with him, more than they normally would, which I think is really, really important. Whether it's crowd noise or whatever you do, you have to put him in those live situations. I believe he's completely healthy physically. Now it's just a matter of whether he's ready to, mentally to overcome some of the obstacles along with the operation of the entire program operation.
Mentally, he's not healthy until a kick goes through.
No, and again, it's been the Florida State game, which I guess was November 9th, and that was a very short field goal, if I'm not mistaken, that he kicked in that game, maybe around the 28-yarder. So he has not made a field goal of note since October, not from distance. And so that you have to pay attention to that. It's going to be incredibly cold Friday night here in South Bend. The ball travels differently, not as far. It can do some different things in the air. So I do think it's important, but it did seem like Marcus was adamant. He was emphatic that this is truly the best that Jeter has been. I think Jeter, Love, Cross, all those guys got that very first week after Southern Cal completely off. They did some team lifts and some team runs, but there were some players that got some extra maintenance, and those are three of the guys that got much needed extra maintenance.
Tim, I was going to ask you about the IU defense, but since we brought up the weather, Marcus Freeman offered this. There was a question about Curtis Rourke. Very good player. We talked about him, slants, back shoulder phase. He's accurate, pinpoint. He knows where he wants to go with the football every time. But then Marcus Freeman brought up the weather. He said, yeah, they can run, though. The key is they're going to probably have to be able to run, both teams, at 8 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night in this stadium. It is going to be colder than it is in December in South Bend.
They can run, but they don't run as well as Notre Dame does, number one. And number two, this has been a topic of conversation I've had with people because we're hearing about 40-mile-an-hour gusts Friday night. That could change between now and then.
It's beautiful now. He can play a football game right now.
It'd be really nice now, but 40-mile-an-hour gusts. So my point being this: if IU can't throw the football, they're in trouble. Yep. Notre Dame can survive without really pushing the football down the field. I don't think that works for Indiana. Marcus Freeman, of course, isn't going to say that, right. But as he was saying it, I'm thinking this is a conversation I've had. They need to be able to throw the football. Curtis Rourke is very good when he has time and there aren't 40-mile-an-hour gusts.
Well, yeah, and to that point, TP, just what we said last week when we first started assessing this matchup is that you're right. IU has to be able to throw the football. If they're completely one-dimensional, Curtis Rourke can't beat you with his legs, and that further simplifies what Notre Dame would have to do defensively. That's the key. The weather, in my opinion, will not impact Notre Dame as much as it will the IU offense if it's windy and gusty like that, because Notre Dame, again, has Riley Leonard, and he's when weather gets bad, he can be the ultimate game changer.
There's two parts to this, one for both of you. IU's defense, unique scheme. You asked Marcus Freeman about this. They fire in different ways. They twist in different ways. It's not all blitz packages when he says. A lot of people think unique scheme, it's all third and exotics. Well, that's all well and good. This is to stop the run, and it's a different challenge for Notre Dame.
Well, it is, and we've talked about this during the week. I think, play action, RPOs, read option being deceptive, getting that linebacker core to commit to the line of scrimmage, which they love to do. That's why I asked Marcus Freeman about, playing football, not football. Both defenses are similar to that. Riley Leonard has to be a really good decision maker, and even if it is windy, there's some inroads in the short passing game that you can accomplish, and so no, it's extremely important. I think you made a point, Tim, of saying how often Riley Leonard would probably run the football in this game. at least a dozen.
Oh yeah. It'd be a dozen if they were playing Army again out
Yeah.
there for a playoff victory. That's what the 3 or 4, the three-headed monster back there.
For sure, the Hydra. Riley Leonard has to be a Riley Leonard legs game, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean he can't roll out and hit some stuff in the throw game by sucking up the IU defense. But I just think that when you look at that IU defense, with the exception of the Pons kid, who's really good and has some nice wheels to him, Riley Leonard can outrun a lot of the IU defense. So if they're committing guys up around the box and Riley is making good decisions, I not only think he'll get a lot of 15, 16 carries, I think he can have a huge day running the football.
He's going to outrun every linebacker he plays against, right?
Once he gets that second step, he has real speed down the sidelines. I thought, just to put a finer point on this, I thought it was interesting when Freeman said, look, we're looked at all the things they do, we have plans for it, but we also just have to go block and run. It's like you can't figure out every little scheme that's coming at you, and that is playing football instead of football offensively with one of the better offensive lines in the country, and Jeremiah Love. We were asked, there was a question about Bo Collins today. I would not have thought about this, but it was a good question, because not only did he drop the only pass that was sent to him for the USC game, and I want to point out while we were riding to that game, we said, how many passes is he going to drop today? Because it's not ripping on Bo Collins. He was clearly nervous about going back for the first time to California, and he's had 6 or 7 drops this year. Freeman said he's had good practices. They can't afford that. Not this game, any of the next 4 games.
No, not at all. And I expect his concentration to be great, whether it's him or you go.
He's not the only dropping player, but he's
no.
the most.
I mean, Jordan Faison has to be more consistent as well, and then you worry about the weather conditions. But again, I agree, John, when you talk about this Riley Leonard legs game, that first and foremost, well, along with Jeremiah Love's, those are a good pair of legs there too. Yeah, no doubt, and Jadarian Price. So yeah, I think that's a real advantage for Notre Dame. Tim, you want to talk about the quarterback conversation that was brought up about the roster and the future of it that we didn't necessarily expect him to offer again?
Right. I'm not sure if this is how the question was being posed, but he mentioned, how do you teach, and it was about Riley Leonard, I think, how do you teach a one-year quarterback your playbook? It is a difficult situation. It was even harder for Riley Leonard because he wasn't involved as much in the spring and summer. Marcus Freeman, at some point, he complimented Leonard and Denbrock and Gaduli, and then he said it's not a problem we expect to have in the future.
Right.
If all 4 quarterbacks come back, I don't expect them to have that problem in the future. Other than that,
it's not something we plan on worrying about in the future, is exactly how he said it.
Yeah.
And he was not asked specifically. That's why I find that interesting.
Right, and look, he's getting it out there. He wants to allay the concerns of some of these players, or more likely the concerns of some of these players' parents. And if it's the same 4 opening spring camp that are opening playoff game week preparations today, then the Irish won't need to go into the portal. If it's not the same 4, then Marcus Freeman has allowed himself the leeway to say, well, variables change. We have to do what's best for the program.
I found it interesting that it was definitely volunteered by Marcus Freeman. He's aware of the situation.
We've talked about this, about not a lot of conversation about transfer portal people. I think until this IU game is over.
The point we should bring up, we didn't know, I don't think I knew this, that Notre Dame is the only playoff team not to have a portal entry.
I didn't know that either. That says a lot about the program. It says a lot about the organization of the program to prevent that from happening in advance of the playoff game. I just think that the IU game, we've talked about this, being on campus, I think things change fairly significantly when you're leading into the, quote, bowl game.
Right.
New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, New Year's night. I think it'll be different then if Notre Dame is still live and ready to play Georgia.
Go ahead.
I was just going to 2 quick notes I would like to add. To that point, I think that other programs would look very differently at you if you are playing a role on your team and you voluntarily go into the portal when your program's hopes and dreams and title aspirations are right there in front of you. And the last thing about the weather and the actual game on Friday night is, if the winds are a factor, could this be a Jaden Harrison game? I've been waiting on Jaden Harrison to uncork a kickoff return for a touchdown all year. I've seen him do it at Marshall. I know how gifted he is. And again, as good as Indiana is, Notre Dame is still the faster, deeper, more talented team, and I think Notre Dame is the decisively faster team in some key areas.
Shovel passes to Jaden Harrison, I think, is a good way to get him. Yep.
Hey, me and the toss sweeps. It's my favorite thing in the world. After people stop doing it for 20 years. We have players coming up. We don't have Jaden Harrison, but we have about 8 players coming up today. We'll have more on that later. And tomorrow, I'm messing up my weeks here. Yeah, tomorrow on Monday, we will have the 3 coordinators. Interviews at irishillustrated.com. For Tim Prister and John Brice, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for joining us. Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame in Elkhart, Indiana.